is buffer time? What is buffer time? Is what buffer time?
Do you ever feel wrath, or maybe Khan? Sometimes even the of? Well, we're going to explore all those things today, but before we do, let's go around and introduce ourselves. I'm Dustin from Best of Trek, Worst of Trek.
I'm Melissa, part of Best of Trek, Worst of Trek.
I'm the Windgrace refit, and I do feel of quite frequently.
Scott! With opinions no one cares about.
My name is Vanessa, and I host a YouTube channel called I Love Bad Star Trek, and I'm very too.
I feel that, I do, especially today. And Nadia, no, we're running a little late getting started here. You're fine. Though I'll announce this a couple of times. I'll start right here off the bat. Next week and weeks thereafter, we're going to push the show back an hour. So we'll be starting at 9 o'clock Eastern. Was that 6 o'clock Pacific?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Correct.
All right.
So before we get in to the movie we're here to talk about, I think the only piece of news we have is Strange New World Season 4 started filming today. Pretty cool. We still don't have a release date for Season 3, but I imagine we'll be getting that soon. We haven't even had a proper trailer.
No, just the Vulcan thing.
I know,
Yeah,
Josh, like you had
that.
announced a little bit of news this week.
Oh yeah, the Khan, that kind of ties into this. They're finally going ahead with the Nicholas Meyer Khan audio adventure. I don't know exactly what we want to call it, which was originally going to be like several episodes. Now it's just going to be one long one, and it's already done. So that might be the next thing we get.
Cool. You know, Nadia, we're talking about moving back to 9 o'clock every week from here going forward. So I hope that works for you and everybody else. I guess we'll see how this works going forward. All right. If there's no more news, then let's get some conning going. Did anybody else besides us watch the trailer?
I don't know if it's the same one you watched. I watched a TV spot, which I think was different than the theater one. But it was interesting.
There's one attached to the version on Paramount. You can also see it on YouTube. I was going to ask, would you watch the movie based on the trailer? Because like for such a great movie, trailer's kind of weak, kind of weird. And it's got this weird like deadpan narrator that doesn't do anything for me. But if nobody else has seen it, then I guess we're not really going to talk about it.
Like, I think since the beginning of trailers in general, it's rare that a trailer actually captures the goodness of a good movie. Like, I think even more now, where all of them sound exactly the same, the editing is exactly the same. It's hard to know what you're even watching.
I have heard that the trailer for the next movie completely ruined a certain aspect of it, but I guess we could get into that next week.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I don't want to spoil the next movie for anyone who hasn't seen it.
That was actually one of the only things I had watched the Nicholas Meyer and Manny Cotto commentary for Khan, and they talked about that a little bit and how even though they weren't neither one of them was part of that, they hated that. But yeah, we'll get into that one next week. So our first real question for this movie: does the Kobayashi Maru test make sense?
Were you thinking about me when you wrote this question?
No.
I gotta know, because I made a whole video about the Kobayashi Maru.
I know you did. It's a good one. Everybody should go watch it.
Thank you. I don't know, maybe I should go last then. What do you guys think? Like, what do you guys think about it?
I don't think there's any way to win the argument. So I think the Kobayashi Maru I think conceptually it's like kind of a cool idea. I don't know if I kind of jive with the fact that it's seemingly going forth after this the same test with different parameters. I feel like it would make a little more sense if it was more of a different thing thrown at them every time. And the fact that the entire original
Mm-hmm.
cast is taking part in this is a little bit strange, but I actually like that. It's almost like all of the higher ups at your school are coming down for your final exam or something, and really kind of putting the screws to you. But in universe, it might be a little wonky, but I think it's a good idea.
I think it's ethically iffy to sort of give somebody who is on the end of their Starfleet Academy tenure a trick question to test their resolve. But at the same time, it's like this test has never changed since Kirk was in a cadet. So I really wonder how nobody knows going into it. Like, how do they keep it a surprise?
Yeah, like what Nadia's saying, that was what I was going to say too.
Yeah. But it's like,
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's a useful skill to know how you would handle not having a clear winning scenario. And Kirk's hubris and insistence that there is a winning scenario to every situation is a very important plot point. And I do wonder, like, thinking outside the box got him a commendation, but he didn't work within the parameters of the test. The test is meant to see how you would handle a no-win scenario. By jerry-rigging it, he cheated, and that invalidates his test results to me. So, anyhow.
Yeah. And remember when I said correct properly, I was saying that once Kirk figured out how to beat the Kobayashi Maru, maybe people didn't know how he did it, but it has to be a matter of record that he did. Because, I mean, Bones mentions it during the movie. So I've always thought that from that point forward, the idea of the test was meaningless because anyone who knew they were taking the Kobayashi Maru exam had only one thought on their mind, and that was trying to beat the unbeatable test just like Kirk did. So, yeah, the fact that it's been the same since he was a cadet and even goes by the same name, it's kind of over. I think what I come up with is the idea that, you know, you keep the no-win scenario because that's something that a Starfleet cadet should learn, especially if they're on the command track, but you apply it to different scenarios, whether it's, I don't know, a rescue mission or stopping a plague or whatever, just because, you know, obviously being in battle is not the only time you're going to possibly run into a situation where you might not win. And you just need to have these cadets prepared for anything and prepared to lose anything.
It reminds me of two things we've seen elsewhere. The surprise thing Wesley got thrown into in the first season of TNG, his little academy training, and then
yeah,
also
the psych test.
Yeah, the short treks with the one where I can't remember her name.
Oh,
but it
yeah.
was Captain Pike was there, and it was like a fake event. And
Oh yeah,
Yes, that was a good one.
Like
I'm
that
still
type of
pissed that
stuff.
they didn't bring her back in Strange New Worlds.
Right.
And,
Yeah, I
and
thought
again,
that was
it's
what
like,
it was.
it's important for these cadets to have this experience, but at the same time, Wesley really thought those people were going to die. He wasn't aware of the urgency and all of that. So it's like, or that they were just acting. So it's like, is that? Yeah, I wonder. It reminds me of sort of like a human experimentation. Like you have to get their consent to certain things, even though you don't tell them everything about the experiment. You know, so I question the ethics of it.
As far as the last thing Nadia says here about Deanna's commander exam, that's not technically a no-win scenario. It is a single win scenario where you've got to make the tough choice, but it's similar, where you've got to it's a make or break decision that you're being forced into.
Yeah, that what you're talking about is sort of like a Sophie's choice is thing, which is what Wesley had to deal with, not a no-win.
Yeah, Vanessa, you're absolutely right. That was actually what I used to make my point. The fact that he didn't know that he was being tested. And that honestly is the way a lot of cadets at the academy should be tested on more things, in my opinion, especially again if they're on command track.
I think we already mostly covered it, but I had a follow-up question about like, what do you think of Kirk's unique win to that scenario?
Cheating's cheating, man. Like, just it invalidates the test. So
Yeah,
what is the
Starfleet's all
test
about following the
measuring?
rules, and then yeah,
It definitely feels
Yeah.
like the type of thing,
and especially
where
the
they
fact that he got a commendation for it.
like, yeah,
Sorry, I
it
must be
feels like they
loud.
would have
Sorry.
congratulated him and then said, "All right, but now do it for real."
That's very white guy mediocrity. Like, I can't stand to lose kind of thing, so I'm going to rig it in my favor. Like, yeah, he didn't work within the parameters, so it's like, how would he handle a no-win scenario? We'll never find out, and Starfleet never got that data. So,
Well,
Yeah.
I think that was
no,
the
they
point of
did,
that.
because they say in this movie that he'd taken it 3 times, and his third one was a unique result. So he had already taken it a couple of times.
I wonder how you fail it. Like, if it's a no-win scenario, how would you fail it?
Dahl did 437 times in Prodigy.
Well, I guess it's
Oh,
just
yeah.
to you that you feel like you've failed, because it isn't truly a failure. But I guess if you feel like you've failed it and you want to keep going at it. I just realized it. So Picard faced the no-win scenario in Generations, which we'll get to here in a few weeks, and then has to go get Kirk to bail him out of the no-win scenario. I hadn't thought about that before, but yeah, get the guy that can win the no-win scenario to win your no-win scenario.
And then only go back in time enough to not really do much. But anyway, that's a different movie.
You have a fan, Vanessa.
Hi, Nadia.
Yeah, if you haven't before, Nadia, make sure you go check out Vanessa's channel about like bad episodes of Star Trek. It's wonderful.
Thanks, Dustin. That's a thank you. That's very sweet.
And
problem.
books. Covering the books.
Yeah, I'm going to give everybody an opportunity to talk
Yeah.
about what you're doing here in a little while too, because I've got a thing coming up speaking about books. All right.
All right.
So our next thing, does it feel like T'Lyn in Lower Decks is based on Kirstie Alley's version of Saavik?
It wasn't until you mentioned it that I thought about that. And then I thought it in reverse, though. So, like, we have T'Lyn, at least from my perspective, in terms of watching and remembering the characters, that T'Lyn seems to be more... losing my train of thought. It goes back from... Never mind. I can't remember what I was going to say. It seems like there's more T'Lyn in Saavik, now that you mention it.
I hadn't thought about it till this watch through, and I'm like, wow, she feels an awful lot like T'Lyn.
Yep.
Does T'Lyn recite Starfleet codes?
No.
Like law?
Think she
Like, that's the
Did
thing
at least once, but
that really stuck out to me, is like, this is like a really obnoxious DM more than a T'Lyn, personally. No, it's on your second action. Like,
well, I guess what I notice about her is the common ground is that she's not quite the prototypical Vulcan. She is very logical and by the book, but she's got these little off cues where like, oh, I have a feeling, and it's that same kind of thing where it feels like T'Lyn to me.
Yeah, she's not as Vulcan as
Mhm.
other characters.
Sure.
Even though she does seem very prim, and reciting the Starfleet code is definitely signs of a professional officer. She does have more of that like feeling expression, a little bit
But-
softer than what we've seen.
it does like speak to her inexperience to constantly recite that stuff, because there's a difference between like knowledge and applicability. How code works out in the field is very different from in the book. So it's like she's got it committed to memory, but I liked that moment when she was talking with Kirk about the Kobayashi Maru and her insecurity around her results and everything. But it's like that's exactly the wrong person to go to about that.
Yep.
It did kickstart the Trek trope of adding a female Vulcan into an already ongoing series to kind of freshen up, though. They've kind of fallen back on that several times now.
Yeah, it's true.
So we talked about this a little last week. It was something that I had noticed in the motion picture about Bones. Basically, his only purpose for being in that movie is to be Kirk's conscience. And I notice it again here. Is Bones basically, he has a little more in this one, but is he basically here to just be Kirk's conscience?
And deliver tasty drinks.
I mean,
That too.
Very tender.
Like McCoy seems to function as a counselor in these movies.
I guess we'll have to see going forward. I think this trope breaks after this movie, but
well, after
but
this
yet
movie,
again,
things change as far as relationships go between Bones.
Very
and
much.
something that happens to him. So
I guess we don't have much of an answer. Scott, why don't you talk about what you had noticed in coming out of this scene this past week?
Oh, this particular scene, the little time issue. Okay. So it pertains to a little bit later in the movie when Khan says he's been stranded on Ceti Alpha 5 for 15 years. And I question that because I went back and looked up like when Space Seed actually took place. And admittedly, this was, AI on Google, but it says that it's 2267. So you jump forward 15 years and that makes 2282. But that scene right there, yeah, that is Jim and Bones sharing a bottle of Romulan ale that Bones brought him that is apparently vintage 2283 a year later. And I think he said it had to take a while to ferment, which makes me think the continuity probably wasn't fully established yet, but yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing, because this movie was the first time we ever established where in our Gregorian calendar timeline Star Trek was set. And those dates that you found via AI are actually right, because it's all supposed to be 300 years from when it was televised. So you've got 1967 when Space Seed came out, and then 1982 when Wrath of Khan came out. So that is all right. I always knew that it was like really close to it, but I hadn't thought about it till you pointed out that the dates are actually like negative quantum dating. There's some time shenanigans going on here. But we'll give them a pass because they hadn't really established a continuity. I mean, at that point, going back, like they established, all right, this is the 23rd century, but they didn't even tell you what the date was in this movie. Just that, this stuff was 2283. So in theory, it's later, but then they decided, I guess, maybe after the movie that, all right, that's just a solid 300 years. Go ahead, Vanessa.
I was just curious about, like, do Romulans measure time in the exact same way? Would they put a star date on a wine bottle, is what I'm saying. Like, when they use their own dating.
Well, even if they did, it was Bones that said 2283. I don't think the Romulans would say 2283.
Gotcha.
So.
Gotcha.
Mistranslated.
Right.
And yes, Nadia, that's the answer to everything you can understand in Star Trek. Chronotons.
Well, Strange New World Season 3 has an entire episode devoted to correcting that oversight. So that's all right.
Probably.
Sarah's involved. Was that her name?
Is Khan? Here's some more discontinuity. Is Khan remembering Chekhov a mortal sin in canon? Even though
I
Chekhov
personally,
didn't show up till the next season.
I like to just believe he was lower decks or something, or he hadn't been promoted to the bridge yet, because there's no real introduction episode of Chekhov when he first shows up in TOS. It's not like, oh, here's our new officer, we're just transferred over. He's just there, so he could have just not been bridge crew yet.
Yeah, that was always the retconned thing that's been said.
Yeah.
Here's the thing I noticed from this scene right here that I hadn't noticed before. That I think this is the only time in the movie you see it. Khan's like turban-like thing, like they had alluded to in Space Seed, and that MacGyver's drew him as, like with the whole Sikh thing going on. Because he unwraps it pretty quick, and then like you don't see this again.
That is a good point. I didn't think of that.
It's true.
Who'd want to cover up that hair or that chest?
Oh, speaking of which, let's
As I understand it, that chest was not padded. It was just a kind of enhanced, sort of a male wonder bra of sorts. But that is mostly Ricardo Montalban.
Yeah, it's all Ricardo Montalban. I know he got asked for like the rest of his career, like, oh, was that a prosthetic? Nope. So here's a question I had. Is Khan's chest the best chest in all of Star Trek? And,
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
between this, it's somewhere between this and Lursen Bator boob windows, but even I gotta say, I think it's Ricardo Montalban's chest.
I mean, you need to throw an Angel One Riker, but he's no contest.
Ooh.
Oh no, the one-sided nipple thing, just no. Like this, yes, thank you for putting that picture up.
That's
That is
it's
just
the deepest
beautiful.
to ever be.
Everyone can appreciate that. Everyone can appreciate that.
Yeah, I think he and the Duras sisters are tied for cleavage.
And they both get big screen appearances, so I guess that makes
Sorry.
sense.
So you got a little slip there. You don't even like it's interesting to see these stills because you don't really notice it in the movie itself, but there it is.
Yeah, I hadn't noticed the big scar until I got the still. Boy, we are chewing through some questions here. If SETI Alpha 5 has been dead for as long as Khan says, what have he and his crew been surviving off of? The earworms?
That's a good question.
His breast milk.
Nice.
That didn't look like, what was it, 70? How many people were? Damn.
It's a whole litter.
I mean, unless they went super dark and like ended up eating the ones that didn't make it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Ah, yes, Donner Party style.
What I'm saying.
I could see them being super pragmatic with their compartmentalizing
Resources.
their ways. Yes.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I mean,
They're
not
burying their
as-
dead. How do they find them again in the sandstorms?
As far as 60s Hollywood, yeah, they just like brown person, we can stick whatever brown person we have available into role. And then by that time,
100%.
I don't think they should have recast after that because, yeah, now Ricardo Montalban has sealed the role unless they absolutely had to.
Yeah.
Tell that to
I mean, yeah,
Benedict
wasn't that-
Cumberbatch. That was such
Oh
a
my
horrible
Oh, that's-
casting.
That's
Don't. No.
yeah, that's a movie we're
dare
going to
you.
be talking about.
Bad, bad, bad.
We've got 2 months or so before we have to
No.
talk about
Why
that
would
pile of
he
shit.
ever be named Khan? Why didn't they just call him something else?
They
you
had a
know?
whole
Right.
backstory.
They had a reason.
He
Yeah,
it
it was
wasn't
in a
his original
comic.
body. there was a cloned body. He was
Oh, God
Ricardo,
damn it.
and they cloned his body so he could like go undercover more easily when Section 31 found
That's
him or
so
something.
funny because it's so they cloned a South Asian person and out came a white person. That's amazing.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I
Right.
guess at least in that, a Mexican person playing an Indian, that's like,
Right.
all right, well, that's whatever we could find actor that we had available in the 60s. But, at least when you crashed a British guy, India was a British possession for a long time.
That's
I don't know.
that's stretchier than Stretch Armstrong, man. There's so many Indian actors out there. Like,
Well, they got one for this new audio drama, so
That's
that's
true.
pretty cool.
then
Well, and
you
who
can't
knows what
see
the
him.
90s are going to be like? Like the state of the world could be completely different by 1996. Who knows?
That's true.
Yeah.
I'm not defending Benedict. I'm just saying they actually wrote a reason for it.
They kind of had to.
Yeah.
Before we move on to the next thing I had to talk about, this was just something that I had noticed that for all the times I've seen this movie, I never caught on to the fact that Transporter Chief Kyle from TOS is on the Reliant Bridge. And they even name him like Mr. Kyle. Never caught on to that till this past week.
Hey.
They say Mr. Kyle.
Yeah,
Like a
that's
kindergarten
how they
teacher?
address him. Because he's just a crewman and not like a ranked character. He's
Well,
not an
Savick was
officer.
Mr. Savick too.
That's a good point.
Mhm.
That, right,
It's
but I
so
would
sad.
just. I guess I would think he would be a ranked officer by that point. Like he is on the bridge right now, so he must be doing something. Sensor guy.
He should be the Chief Kyle.
I think
Like
it's a matter
O'Brien.
of having to go to the academy because, like, O'Brien had laid out that, he didn't want to become an
Yeah.
officer because you have to go through the academy, and that's at least 4 years. But if you take the engineering, whatever that school is, it's only like a 2-year thing. So it's the difference between like an associate's and a bachelor's.
So we cut corners and suffered forever.
Or like going to ITT Tech versus, yeah.
DeVrar. So the next real question I had was, why is dying crewman Preston brought to... Don't quote me the garbage answer from the novelization, though please quote it for anybody that doesn't know.
Uh-oh.
What happened?
He gone.
I was just going to say emotional shock value. Come on.
Of course.
He's
Okay.
back.
I don't know what happened. I switched over to my notepad, and then you guys are like, I'm gone. Let's try this again. Okay, so why is dying crewman Preston brought to the bridge? And only quote the garbage answer from novelization so that the people in the audience that don't know what it is can know. But I don't accept this answer.
You don't accept that he is actually Scotty's nephew, which still doesn't make any sense because sickbay was probably way closer than the bridge.
Uh-huh. No,
Oh dear.
Too hot. It's too
Come
hot of
on.
a question.
what is happening here? Every time I switch to a notepad,
The stream's
This
working
is
about as
kicking
well
me
as
out.
the turbo lifts.
yeah, okay, that's the point here. Just talk to me about Scotty and his dead nephew and why he's on the bridge with him. Why? Why are we here?
Because it was his dream.
He's the
to
one
see
that keeps
bridge
kicking you
before
out,
he died.
man. You got to stop talking about it.
That's fair.
Did we ever?
Oh,
did we actually?
gross.
No, we did see him in sick bay. I was going to say maybe they didn't build a sick bay set, but
Yep.
we saw it later. Okay.
Yeah, he dies in it after this.
Just take him there. It's for drama.
Maybe the computer couldn't understand his grief-ridden accent, where he was asking it to go.
Yeah, in the commentary I watched, Nicholas Meyer said
Mhm.
he doesn't believe in director's cuts, but the only thing he wanted to save that he could not get the studio to budge on was cutting the whole thing about him being Scotty's nephew, which I still wouldn't make the turbo lift thing here make any sense, but
No.
would have made this hit a little harder. And it's not just some random dude from engineering that Kirk talked to in the beginning now died. Whatever.
Although retroactively knowing that, the scene when Kirk is talking to him, you could see like Scotty's looking at him with like a glimmer
Yeah.
in his eyes.
Yep.
So it's like, all right, I can kind of see
Maybe
exactly that. But
maybe he asked Scotty for coffee, and he's providing the excuse. The dog ate my homework. Look, my crewman's dead. That's why I don't have your coffee, Captain Kirk. I don't know. I just can't imagine.
Why is main power down? This is why main power's down.
oh,
Okay.
speaking of which,
Okay.
there were new toys announced at Toy Fair this weekend, and he's one of them.
Scotty or
No,
Preston?
no, Preston's action figure.
Oh, okay.
Like
The
like
burned
Does it
body
look like
part or the
bride?
actual one?
Yeah, I would only
No,
want
no.
the burned body.
No, not burn.
Yeah,
well,
I
maybe
want-
there's a variant with the burn.
I want him. I want extra crispy.
Extra crispy.
Preston.
I knew you were gonna
Yeah.
say that. Yes, that's what I was just thinking too. Yes.
Yes.
Do I dare switch over to my notepad?
Can you put it on a different screen?
It doesn't even cost much. You just got to give the word.
So far, we're here.
Okay, good. Is the classic Khan scream by Kirk one of the best things in cinema? Or a piece of over-the-top garbage?
It is not over the top garbage to the point where, in my job, as part of some of my like note taking clerical stuff, I had to assign some referrals to one of our consultants, and in doing so, the last name was Khan. So I always extra wrote out the letters Khan because I was so entertained by this line that it's just part of my everyday work life. It's iconic. I don't think it's crappy.
And hopefully they'll never repeat it in another Star Trek movie ever again.
Yeah. It's done. It's beautiful. Just leave it.
Yeah, I've definitely. I didn't ask this thinking that like anybody would say that there's anything wrong with this. I've got more to say when we get to the reboot of the Wrath of Khan, but this one, no. This is one of the greatest moments in cinema.
So,
It is very over the top, and I think in most productions this would be like a jump the shark moment, but it just hits. It works really well.
Some of Shatner's best acting are in these three movies coming up, starting here in the next couple.
I think like
Absolutely.
sometimes Shatner's acting hits and sometimes it
Vanessa,
doesn't.
you are muted.
Oh, I am?
No, I can.
What?
Oh,
I can hear it.
I cannot.
It's all you.
Can you hear us?
I can hear you guys.
Okay,
You can't hear me
That's weird.
at all?
I can.
Oh, okay.
I can.
Kirk
Weird.
can.
Now I can.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Weird.
I was just saying, like sometimes Shatner's acting really hits, and sometimes it doesn't. And there are moments in bad episodes where he kind of does this kind of thing, and it's just a lot in the moment. You know, it's almost like that note in a Kid Rock song where like Kid Rock is just like, "Arr!" You know, he does that note, and like that's his Kid Rock note right there.
So this is like,
And-
I'm Captain Kirk.
Yeah, it fits in this scenario. And it's like it's the most iconic scene in the whole movie. So
Chronicons? Chronicrons?
Chronicon.
That even fits when you consider that Shatner has done a metal album, which is probably better than anything Kid Rock's ever done.
totally, 100%.
Radio edit.
Oh, we all grew up in the 90s. Huh? Okay. Why
There's
does this
also
move?
like Oh, I was
Go
just
ahead.
gonna say there was also like a bit of a cornball off between Ricardo Montalban and Shatner. That's how I sort of saw this movie, is like, who's gonna go up here? If you go up here, I'm gonna go up here. Like it was really like a cornball off. Like, yeah.
That's fair. Like almost from the moment that Khan's like, Admiral. He tasks me.
Well, here's a question. Yeah, that we can talk about some cornball stuff and just one-upping each other. Why does this movie have the most quotes from classic literature? And what is the best quote? Because yeah, Kirk and Khan, it's mostly Khan, but they're one-upping each other with these classic book quotes. And I do love the foreshadowing that we get to see all of these books towards the beginning,
Oh yeah.
right on Khan's shelf in the Botany Bay.
Yeah, it's clear that he's, been
Oh, is Moby Dick one?
blitzing through that. I think the Revenge is a dish best served cold is the one that hits the most for me.
That's
The
maybe
Klingon proverb.
it's probably something to do with the aging aspects of this. They're now both more, well, at least Kirk especially, and Khan's been trapped down there, so they've had a lot of time to read and ingest knowledge more so than the more cavalier cowboy days of the earlier Star Trek. So it's kind of more of a mind game than a battle of strength like a Gorn fight or something. It's wits.
If I'm not mistaken, Nadia, all of Christopher
Oh,
Plummer's quotes are Shakespeare. At least this is
they
varied
are.
across a lot of literature.
There's a couple other ones in there that aren't Shakespeare from like Chekhov or something, but we can talk about
Yeah,
that
but
when we
from
get
Christopher
there.
Plummer specifically,
Yeah,
I think everything he does is Shakespeare.
I do agree with Nadia that it is a little bit of a I don't want to say crutch because that's not the word I'm looking for, but it's something to lean on when like an original quote, an original thought might do better. Because it's like we get it. You've read books.
Well, of course he has. He's an
He
odd
got one as a
He's a
gift.
super genius. He's read everything.
But it's like even when he's talking to himself, he's doing that.
Yeah. Would it have worked better if he quoted some like more children-oriented books, like some Amelia Bedelia or something? Pippi Longstocking? I don't know.
I think my favorite.
Joaquin's
Wait
just
for the Mark Twain, please.
Oh gosh.
Oh, no
right,
twaining.
Please no more.
No twaining.
No.
no twaining. Not here, man. Not the time.
I think my favorite quote is by Khan, and it's the like Star Trek twist on the round the Antares, moons of Antares, and round Perdition's Flame and stuff. That's I think that's my favorite.
I like his dying words.
Oh yeah.
Moby Dick.
From Moby Dick.
Yep.
From
Because the
hell's
whole thing is
cavity.
chasing the white whale. And he cannot get Kirk. And it wasn't until recently watching the movie that I was like, they never filmed together, William Shatner and Ricardo Montalban. They were always filmed separately, and they never met in the film. And so just that separation of, here's this idea that I'm chasing, that I'm obsessed with, and I will chase it down to my grave. And then quoting from Moby Dick is like, yeah, that's pretty poetic. Like the original Klingon suffices here.
I wish, similar, piggybacking off of what you just said, I wish they would have just stuck with one book. Similar to DS9 and I think it's Les Miserables, Javert for
Yeah,
Cisco.
Yeah, that would have made more sense.
Mhm.
If we
Yeah.
each other.
Rather than sort of like jumping
Mhm.
around. Like I get it. They read all of those books, but I think just sticking with one character in one book would have been much more powerful.
Surely the best of times.
Yeah, if nobody ever picked up on it, my channel, Best of Trek, Worst of Trek, comes from the beginning of Tale of Two Cities. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times.
Nice.
I do like how Kirk comes in with the book. I mean, you don't know what it is when you first see him, but he's got that, and that's pretty cool.
A paper book. I used to live with a guy that read paper books.
Paper, it's true.
I have a paper book.
Yay, books.
I also have the Wrath of Khan book. I just don't have it on my hands.
You showed it to us. I know
Yeah.
it exists. You have it.
Yeah.
So,
Give it a few
speaking
weeks,
of
I'll show
books,
you Final Frontier.
we've only got a couple more questions, so let's take the opportunity. We'll go around and talk about some things that we're all doing for our own channels. So something that I just picked up the other day is this cool as hell Lower Decks interactive choose your own adventure book called Your Warp Your Own Way. I think Wednesday night, 8:00, I am going to do a live stream here. And I hope we get a ton of audience because I'm going to have you guys in the chat. Whatever, when we get to a choice, I'm going to ask the chat. And whatever gets the most votes, that is how we're going to go through the book. I haven't read it yet. I've flipped through it a little bit, but I haven't done a scenario. So I think it's going to be fun. So yeah, join me here for that at 8:00 on Wednesday. And on Thursday, I have coming out my biggest what if yet. What if Riker was in command of the Enterprise D after Best of Both Worlds? This has been quite an epic. It is wearing on me to finish. I'm almost there.
You can do it.
But yeah, so that's what I've got going on.
Okay.
Let's go this way.
Okay. For the better part of 2 years, I have been 2 years, doesn't matter. I've been working on my ongoing project of watching every episode of Star Trek and summarizing it as best as I can in a minute or less. You can find this on YouTube on hashtag 60-second summary. I've been going chronologically by when the shows were released for some crazy reason. I've done all of TOS, all of TAS, all of TNG, all of DS9, and I'm currently at the rate of one episode a day, putting up season 2 of Voyager.
Nice.
Josh, you got anything in the pipeline?
Yeah, so I started a couple things, and then my throat was killing me for about a week and a half, so my progress was delayed there, but I'm starting to do a podcast sort of scenario thing, basically, so I don't have to do much video editing, but it's going to be an alternative take on the events of Voyager from a rapscallion's point of view, I guess you could say.
Hell yeah.
And then I'm going to start doing some more of those mystery shorts, like Great Mysteries of Star Trek History.
Yeah, that was fun. I liked what you did there.
And then if any news comes up, maybe I'll talk about that too.
Nice. Yeah.
May I go?
Go.
Okay, great. So I am working on reading through Star Trek books because I have quite a few that have been donated, gifted, what have you to me. I'm reading like a chapter and reviewing them chapter by chapter on shorts. And I am currently working on a video for the book Imzadi, one of the worst books I've ever read, never mind Star Trek book. So I would be, if anybody knows of any worse ones, because I like bad things, let me know in the comments.
How do you pronounce the name of that author again?
I completely have spaced. Like I've said it like how many times, and then
David
Peter.
Something or another, right?
Oh yeah, Peter David.
Yeah.
And so I will be uploading that as soon as I film it and finish the script and film it and edit it. and upload it. So there's that.
Nice.
Chekhov, what are you doing?
He's gonna put on one of them monkeys haircut wigs. He's gonna do a monkeys tribute band, and we're gonna do it live. That's Chekhov's next thing. Yeah, Nadia, definitely we will be done before sure. I would like to think this is just a a fun graphic novel. We will be done before 9 o'clock before Sharice's thing.
That's right.
And your family can vote,
Yes.
and then like your vote can go to whatever Dustin's going to do.
All of them are required to vote separately.
Your vote counts for way more than the last presidential election, I promise. Okay, back to the task at hand. I got
Oh,
just
yeah,
a
what were we
couple more Wrath of Khan questions. Is the ship a P word in Wrath of Khan more tolerable than the motion picture just because there's less of it?
It is funny how quickly you recognize the feedback that they got about the TMP ship, P word.
One of those words YouTube hates.
Ship gooning.
Because you immediately brought to mind the Ben Shapiro P word thing. That's what I was thinking of. Anyways,
ass P word.
this perfect impression. Yeah, like
Scott does a perfect impression.
it just really makes me laugh, like how much more truncated it is. It's basically the exact same scene though. Like they could have just beamed him aboard.
Well, I think a lot of footage was reused.
It is.
I don't know if
Pretty
I
sure
don't know
it's
if
like
that
the exact
part
same
was, but I
footage.
think so. Like the whole Kobayashi
Some of
Maru
it-
was just reused Klingon ships from when they attacked
Yeah.
V'ger.
I know some of it's reused from TMP, but I don't think the shot where they show the shuttle bay right before they dock in this one, I think that's a new shot, or at least it's one. If it is, it's one that they cut from TMP.
They cut something from TMP.
I know, right?
At least it's useful here, I guess. I mean, I agree with you. They could have totally just beamed aboard, but they had to show, oh, look, it's the Enterprise in the big screen again. But since you've seen it for 20 minutes in the first movie, we're just going to skip ahead to the action where it's more enjoyable.
To be fair, though, at the point there wasn't really home media, so it's been a few years since you spent those 20 minutes with it. Unless you caught the TV broadcast.
Speaking of home media, something I learned about this particular movie was that it was one of the first affordable VHSs at only $39.99, which was still a lot in $1983 when it came out. But you got to remember, most tapes at that time were coming out at $80 to $100 in that era's money.
Mm-hmm.
No, just VHS, which was just starting to take off as a format. Yeah, that's right. That's why Beta really didn't take on, because most of the P word stuff was on VHS, even though Beta was technically superior.
I was just about to say my grandpa was a beta, but I should probably qualify that more.
That means way more today than it would have, back in his day.
I do wonder, like, how many people saw Wrath of Khan that didn't see TMP or weren't a fan of TMP? Like I know that like we need to see the ship again, but I just wonder like how necessary was it if like who in God's name would see Wrath of Khan if they didn't see TMP at this point?
I can't imagine that there's many.
I don't know. My dad loves The Wrath of Khan, and he is not a Trekkie by any means. And I don't know that if he's seen the motion picture and other movies, if he enjoyed them. But I do know that one of very few things I can connect with my dad on is The Wrath of Khan. So it does reach people as more of an entertainment movie and an action movie.
Mhm.
And I think that because it reaches such a wider audience, that you don't necessarily have to see even the show or the motion picture. And I would caution people to not watch the motion picture, honestly. So
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of which, do you think that scene when Kirk was talking to Spock about like taking over as captain, was that a direct kind of callback to his relationship with Decker in the first one? When Spock's like, I have no ego to bruise. You can be captain. I don't care. Because it felt like he
That's a
had
good question.
learned from that. Like, I don't want to forcefully take over as captain here. But Spock's like, do what you got to do. I don't care.
Well, yeah, and I mean Spock's been his friend. He is forever and shall always be his friend. But you know, where Decker was just, oh hey, I watched your dad die once.
I always thought like the beginning of the movie with McCoy and Spock being like, you have to do like be a captain of a ship again. Like just leave him alone. Maybe he does want to just sit it behind a desk, you know? He seemed to be pressured into this.
No, I think they just knew him. I mean, this is Jim Kirk. This is what he has shown. That's what he showed in the motion picture. I mean, this has been what, like almost a decade since the motion picture in universe. So they must know him pretty well, even in between there, that like he's getting antsy, he's getting restless, he's had enough of doing simulations and stuff.
He's got a really sweet apartment overlooking the bay or whatever. Don't know how he got
True.
that.
Well, I mean, when you're an admiral, you can get anything you want.
it's good to be the king.
Not
And
sure
he
what
apparently
happened to
collects
Scott,
weapons.
but- Yeah, I've only got the one shot. I don't know if it actually shows any of that stuff. Here's Scott. You gonna bring yourself back, Scott, or do I have to do it? I'll do it.
I don't see him.
Are ye back with us?
I see the name. I don't see an image.
Sorry, just noticed my name had changed back, so I switched up my Wi-Fi connection because I was like, "Why I'm lagging so badly?"
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you can't see his weapons
And it's
collection
really-
in this one.
That's cool. It's still a cool place.
It is a really cool apartment.
Just like if anybody broke in, he'd be super screwed. Because all of the weapons are on the walls.
Mhm.
Oh, is this the first time we ever heard the Vulcan language spoken?
Yes.
Was it? Okay.
Yep. And much like Klingon, it was a combination of Gene Roddenberry, James Doohan, and Leonard Nimoy. Mostly James Doohan. That dude did so much behind the scenes in Star Trek. It's ridiculous. Okay, so here's a question that has vexed me for a very long time. And for as much as I like about this movie, I've never quite understood this. So, like, the whole thing at the beginning is they're looking for a planet that can create Genesis out of life, yet it just kind of blows up in the middle of the nebula, and then there's a planet, and we didn't see a star anywhere. Where does this star come from? How does this work? It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. You can't answer chronotons because
What do they call proto matter?
yeah. That's a little problem I have with the next movie, but we'll get to that next week.
It kind of reminded me of like there's like a really bad TNG season 1 episode where they are looking to sort of rehabilitate a dead planet by irrigating it first and then planting life there and everything, and then they find out, oh, it's actually alive. We can't do that.
Home soil.
Yeah, home soil. There you go. I guess
Oh,
like
yeah.
best case scenario would
Yep.
be to generate a planet in the nothingness of space, because then there's nothing to worry about in terms of like, oh, it hits a planet and there's something alive on it that we didn't see before. Um, but I also am baffled by the fact that they just assume that it's a net good. That, oh yay, we made life, but do we don't know anything about it.
Yeah, it's very, very hubristic. Yeah, and who's to say the like
Mhm.
all the other Star Trek shows where we see like the Nexus or the comet in not Year of Hell, like it would change the trajectory of, who knows what. Like a passing thing could change the orbit because of the planet they just made and change life for the next 10,000 years. It's so many unintended consequences.
And also, they weren't even finished developing it yet, and it was already thought of as like could be used as a weapon. So it's like there's a lot of consequences to developing something like that.
I'm sure they'll be just fine at monitoring it. I mean, they monitored SETI Alpha 5 and that ended very well. So I'm sure it's going to be just fine.
The inhabitants of Beta 3 would like a word.
Yeah, that was a whole. Yeah, they monitored the SETI Alpha system so well that they didn't even know SETI Alpha 6 was gone.
That's my other big problem with this movie. Like, all right, so you don't detect like a big ring of debris in the system that you figure out is, oh hey, there's a missing planet here. There used to be a planet. We've been here. We've mapped it. We've charted it.
That's what
And
you get for
also,
putting
like,
the transporter chief in charge of the ship.
I'm also trying, like, I mean, maybe there is some kind of physics precedent that I'm not understanding. But if SETI Alpha 6 blows up, how does SETI Alpha 5 end up drifting further out into the solar system to be in the orbit of SETI Alpha 6? And if that was the case, how isn't it just pummeled by all of the asteroids that made up SETI Alpha 6 to begin with? I am like, it's one of the few there's just a couple of science pieces in this movie that keep it from being a true 10. I love the movie, love it to death, but ooh,
Yeah, the sciencey
Mhm.
parts, the sciencey parts are not its strong suit. I think the thing that Wrath of Khan for me hits the hardest is the sort of what Star Trek does the best is having like submarine like warfare between two ships. That to me is really the highlight of the movie. The stuff that like the how Khan ended up stranded on this planet, as well as the other thing you mentioned, really, really do hold it back logistically. Because I think these aren't difficult things to sort of tease out. It just feels lazy.
okay, so that finishes up our regular questions. Before I put it to the floor for any final questions for Wrath of Khan, Vanessa, you weren't with us last week, but I know you got to watch the special premiere of the director's cut of the motion picture. Was there anything about the motion picture you wanted to say before we move on?
It was just really wonderful seeing the producer and the sound gentleman whose name slipped my mind because I'm terrible with names at the moment. I believe David Fine, I believe. Um, talk about going through the Paramount archives and pulling out the models and how the models were painted and all that little detail that like would kind of go over my head were really beautifully explained, and it was a very intimate um, premiere. So everybody got to ask a bunch of
Nice.
questions. We got like the soundtrack. I got a signed picture still. Really cool
Nice.
event.
That's really cool.
Neat. Okay, is there any final questions any of you guys have about Wrath of Khan? Go.
I was just curious, like, do they have a bagpipe player on board of every starship, or
They
do they just
should now.
have the song on rotation somewhere in the computer? Because I think that would, I mean, I don't know, like a funeral, I would want a live bagpipe player if we're going to go that route, you know?
Yeah. That's a rad
Especially for
idea.
Spock.
Yep.
They're all from that colony that from Sub Rosa
Oh yes.
with
Oh no.
Beverly Howard's grandmother.
You
Or they
can
all
light
have
a
like
candle.
one Scottish person aboard each starship, and they just have to know how to play bagpipes just by virtue of being Scottish or something.
Yep. All right. Anything else?
I mean, we should probably just talk about briefly the whole Spock situation at the end, the sacrifice and all that.
Oh, for what do you mean? What Spock situation?
Where he ordered his dinner, and he got the plomeek soup with extra spice, and everybody was aghast.
Oh, that's what happened. Ooh. Dire hee in the engineering.
Hey, I've seen that
section.
before.
Is that Zachary Quinto and Chris Pine?
I think so. I think so. That's Chris Pine's dad.
Oh,
Ooh. Let me put that, hold
Aww.
on. We'll put that up.
Merry
big
Christmas to me.
Aw, nice.
Very cool.
just a couple of
I
friends.
do. I
doing
like
friend
that.
things.
It's got the divider in it. That's
Yep.
neat.
Yep.
Transparent aluminum, I bet.
Yes, it is.
This is another little quibble that I have. If they have a containment area where people can go into, they have a door and everything. Why is there no suit to make it safe?
There was a suit, wasn't there? That he just took the gloves, though.
Yeah, Scotty
Yep.
was wearing the suit. He just didn't have the helmet at that time. But even then, like, I mean, you got to think that even suits, there's still so much radiation that they can take. And in that situation, like if Scotty had gone in there, he wouldn't have even made it to that. It's only because of Spock's enhanced physiology that he even made it to the pedestal without, keeling over.
They should have sent one of the dots.
Yeah.
It's a dumpster fire. They didn't retroactively think ahead 40 years.
That's a good point. I gotta say, I have seen
Calling these
probably
robots
the
we don't have
two most devastating scenes in media this week. That's the death of Spock, and I'm playing Final Fantasy VII, the original, for about the umpteenth time, and the death of Eris. Still, like, both of these deaths, they hit you hard, even when you know it's coming. I'm still like, I'm not crying, you're crying.
Hopefully, you didn't do them literally back to back.
Not back to back, but back to back days.
Well, we felt half of that. I mean.
I'm still salty. As a kid, somebody told me she came back to life at the end.
There's a lot of foreshadowing at the end of the movie to what comes next in the next movie.
Yep.
Like it's, we'll begin anew. It's interesting. Because it's almost like we get robbed a little bit of like the grieving process of losing Spock, but it's only by virtue of the outrage that Spock lost his life in this movie that he had to come back. So I just wish we let Spock go in this moment. Like it's fine, Sorry.
Josh,
Now I see everyone.
do you hear us?
For now, yes.
Can you
Yes.
hear me?
I hear you.
We.
Okay, let's talk about the things right now while it's all perfect.
Got anyone alive out there?
Can you hear us?
Anybody?
Can you hear me?
That's Spock in the coffin.
Oh dear.
Okay. Well, let's get these out of tens out of the way before everything comes tumbling down upon us like a crumbling Genesis planet. I am gonna give this guy a 9.5. It's got a couple of problems that we've talked about. Like it's mostly the science stuff. Anytime the science fiction hits science, the science doesn't science. So I got to take half a point off for that. Otherwise, it's like a cinematic masterpiece. What a great freaking movie.
Yeah.
I used to think it's the best Star Trek movie. I think there's one better for me, but it's damn close.
Nine
Go
and a
ahead.
half for sure. And mostly for the same reasons. It is my favorite Trek movie. Trek doesn't do movies very well, but they did this one and it is awesome. And how it's so accessible for everybody. You don't have to be a Trek fan to appreciate the action and the depth of emotion between the characters and just the animosity and obsession that Khan goes after Kirk in such a way that it destroys him. Like I think a lot of people can appreciate that story, and it's just a fantastic cinematic adventure. I could watch it all the time.
Vanessa.
I definitely also give it a 9.5 for the same reasons as you, Dustin. I think that this movie stands the test of time. I think also I agree with you that this is a great movie to just be like, recommend it just offhandedly without having to, give the entire context of Star Trek, the sandbox of the world building and everything. Like, you don't have to explain it all. It's all very condensed in a movie. And I think that's the challenge with movies like these. Like, you don't have to know all the lore and stuff, unlike Star Wars. Anyway, yeah, classic.
I guess I'll go. I want to give it a 9.5, but I feel like I should leave a little room for anything I like better. But no, I'll go 9.5. Something I don't think I mentioned last week, which I'm assuming most of us do this, but I don't count the movies like in the same ballpark as the TV shows or anything. So I kind of rank them with the other movies.
I agree. I agree.
So I don't look at it and say like, oh, this movie compared against like Next Generation season 5 or anything. But I think that this specifically, because it changed everything and kind of revitalized the whole franchise, and almost everything in this movie is significantly different from what it was in the motion picture outside of like some of the sets and the ship and stuff like that. Just the grand overhaul to the Star Trek universe is probably the only reason that we continue to have Star Trek after this. I know when Next Generation started, it kind of went back a little bit when Gene got involved, but without all of the revitalization and the new way that Trek worked here, the little bit more militaristic stuff, the submarine battles, although we did have that a little bit in the original series, it really added a lot to this universe that just really stuck with it going into the future. The characterizations here were a lot more on point than they were in the motion picture by the fact that people had personalities and there was a little bit of growth. If you hadn't seen the original series, you might not realize it, but you definitely could see where the characters started and are now, at least the main ones. Maybe not like Uhura, but one day she'll get something to do. I just think it was an all around a better effort and it really revitalized everything.
Well, far be it from me to disagree with everybody. So, yeah, I would also give it a 9.5. And I think it makes it easy to figure out the average. I think part of what makes this a good movie all around is the fact that I've heard this in other places. Nicholas Meyer was not a Star Trek fan. So when he's brought on to direct this movie, he wasn't trying to make a good Star Trek movie. He was just trying to make a good movie. And damn it if he didn't succeed. I love this movie so much as far as Star Trek movies go. I don't know. When it comes to Star Trek movies, I don't necessarily list any of them among like my favorite of all time. They kind of have their own separate category. But I can't think of a bad performance I don't like in here. Yeah, there's some plot holes I don't care. It is well shot and well performed and well written. And the last time I watched it was over the weekend, and I still teared up when Spock died. It's still getting to me. So yeah, all the kudos for this movie that is literally as old as I am.
Hell yeah. So I guess I have one more question that I'd been kind of milling over this week and forgot to add to the list. Can you think of any other movies where the second movie is so much better than the first? I mean, for me, Terminator 2, I wouldn't say it's like
I think of
so
3 other
much
ones,
better.
actually.
It's better, but it's not like it went from like an 8 to a 9.5, whereas this went from like, for me, a 1 or 2 to a 9.5.
Mm. That much better, no. But Terminator 2 would definitely be on that list, as well as actually The Godfather 2, and I mean Empire Strikes Back.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that is better. Again, though,
But yeah,
it's not
nearly
like
as much of a
7
gap.
points better, but
there's not like
it's
a
better.
quantum leap of difference.
Definitely not American Psycho 2.
Oh. But Shatner's in both movies.
That's right. So bad.
It's not Airplane 2 either with Shatner.
I thought you were going to say Airbud too. I don't know why.
Maybe he's Airbud.
He's
I would say Waiting
He's
too.
2. He just has this back and
Waiting
forth, and
2
we don't know
is
what they
way
do.
funnier than the first one. Sorry.
I don't think I've seen the second one.
Really?
Sister Act
It
2
was
Back
a
in the
s-
Habit.
Ooh.
Yeah, Waiting
Oh.
to was a straight to
That's-
DVD movie, and like it's one of those few movies where it's like, yeah, the second one is actually quite a bit
It's
better,
really
even
funny.
though it didn't have a major release.
Hmm.
Okay.
But yeah,
Okay.
it's not even just a better movie. It's entirely different.
Yes.
I can't think of another sequel that just completely reinvented itself and is a better sequel.
And I also agree with you, Josh, that the Star Trek's movies are a far different entity than the TV shows. They have a completely different feel to them.
I prefer looking at Picard season 3 as in the movie category.
It kind
I
of
don't-
is. It really is.
Yep.
Trying to think, that probably is the only like season of Trek that does feel more like the movies than a show.
Or you can go in reverse and make a show into a movie, a la Section 31.
Oh yeah. Well, no, it's a series. I have a comic book that'll tell you that.
I don't think I have to ask the question. Anybody think that Section 31's better than the Wrath of Khan?
No.
Well, if you look at it from a certain point of view.
Well, that point of view being the only thing I will say between these two movies is we don't have a solid budget, but like the kind of leaks that have come out have said that it's Section 31 got made for like the money that took to make 2 episodes of Strange New Worlds, which might be right about the amount of money that it cost to make this movie in real dollars, not even inflation adjusted, as this from the 80s. So in that regards, I guess they did okay with the budget they had. No, it's not even the same ballpark as a movie, but okay. Anything else before we get out of here or before the stream doesn't let us do a thing again? Okay. Well, this has been a fun one. So next week, the obvious thing that we're getting into is the search for Spock. I wonder what that movie will be about. I don't know. You'll have to wait and see. I think so too. Romulans and Chronotons. Obviously Chronotons. That's the answer to everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like to thank you guys for showing up and taking time out of your busy nights to join in on this thing, and for all of you for tuning in. So until we see you again, live long